you ever feel stuck within Tennessee, wanting to use public transportation but having no means of reaching it? You are not alone, as many are unable to utilize much of the public transportation within Tennessee due to inadequate infrastructure and a lack of accessibility. Tennessee's rapid transit lines, bus systems, and trains have quite a walk to reach them, especially to those living in a sprawling city such as Nashville and Memphis. Weather, health conditions, time restrictions, long walking distances, or safety concerns can often deter many from reaching a public transportation pickup location. Although systems cannot make transit reach every doorstep, a first mile, last mile mobility solution program is coming about to conveniently connect riders to transit stops just out of their reaches. What is first mile, last mile? In order to address this paradox, transit services are beginning to eliminate the 1 mile you might have to walk to reach public transportation through partnering with ride-hailing companies such as Uber and mobility solutions. Vehicles will be sent out through online or mobile booking, connecting people to the nearest or most convenient public transportation stop for low-priced, affordable fares. Connecting riders to on-demand transit programs can help impact thousands of lives, increasing communities' access to jobs, healthcare, education, and other social services. One such transit service we will be discussing is WeGoLink, a branch of the Nashville Metropolitan Transit Authority, otherwise known as Nashville MTA. The RTA of Middle Tennessee provides regional transit through 9 commuter bus routes and the WeGoStar commuter rail, connecting people to their lives and communities in the greater Nashville, Davidson County, and Middle Tennessee area. Now, WeGo Transit is helping connect people to increase transportation opportunities by offering comprehensive services to Nashville's neighborhoods through WeGoLink, a rideshare resource for riders who find getting to and from their bus stop challenging. This program will be offering short, on-demand rides to and from 2 Route 55 bus stops along Murfreesboro Pike in Antioch for as little as $2 per ride. In order to utilize this service, one must be traveling within a specific geographic location and within a specific time frame. WeGoLink service is available Monday through Friday from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Rides must begin or end at the Nashboro Village or Bell Road stops and continue within the outlined area on the map provided on WeGo Transit's website. The first time using this service requires one to download a reusable Uber voucher that will help minimize the often steep expense of an Uber ride. Planning the trip is made easy through the Uber app. WeGo is also offering mobility solutions as a rideshare connection. Those who choose to use Uber have experience using the service or have a smartphone. Mobility Solutions, on the other hand, is best for riders who need wheelchair or other disability accessibility, would like to use cash for their trip, or are 17 years old or younger. In order to plan out one's trip and forgo the use of an iPhone or electronic transactions, all one has to do to access the service is call 615-844-3399 for Mobility Solutions. This also discourages the use of cars within Nashville, as convenient on-hand transportation is provided and existing public transportation is used. One can see if their trip is eligible for WeGoLink through an interactive map at nashvillemta.org. This website will be linked below. To gain some insider perspective on the program, we talked to 2 WeGoLink representatives, Dan Freudberg and Felix Castro. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, just talk a little bit about what you work on and services that are provided. So WeGoLink.
Sure. I can start with a quick introduction. So my name is Dan Freudberg. I'm the deputy COO here at WeGo Public Transit. And it's something of a new role for me. I've served in a few different capacities in operations and service planning before this. but a lot of my focus now is on innovation, specifically focused on improving customer experience, and also in working on processes and technology to improve service reliability and just general kind of operational efficiency and effectiveness. So a lot of what we do has to do with technology or innovation, but some of it's also just kind of looking at our own processes and ways that we can improve how we do business.
Hi, I'm Felix Castro. I'm Director of Planning and Grants for WeGo. Our main focus is the strategic long-range planning for the agency. We do work very closely with many other departments, including Dan in many of the projects that he leads. As they, I think planning has a little bit of touches in a lot of different areas, at least in the conceptual, to developing those plans and implementing them, and then as they become more operational, they go pass to the operations side, or if it's some of the capital projects to the engineering department and things of that nature. But the main product that we develop is our strategic plan, which we completed in 2016. It's called In Motion, and it's a long-range 25-year plan for how to guide the improvements of transit here in Davidson County over the next 25 years. And we also, as I mentioned in my title, we also do grants. So we apply and monitor grants and make sure that we continue to bring some revenues for different projects and for keeping the agency moving in that sense.
That's great. So I guess we're just gonna hop right into the questions just to keep it as short as possible. But so the first question is, how would you describe WeGoLink services and its relationship with Uber and Mobility Link? And what are the user costs for these programs?
Sure, I can start. So I would say that a general description of WeGoLink is a supplemental service that's designed to bridge the first and last mile gap between customers' origins and destinations and the broader fixed route bus network. So this particular pilot is taking place in the southeast area of Nashville and Davidson County, and generally in the area known as Antioch. And we have a predefined zone that's about 8 or 10 square miles, centered around 2 bus stop pairs, transfer locations that have shelters and accessible boarding locations, which serve as the connection points between the WeGoLink service and one of our main bus routes that runs about every 10 minutes on weekdays, which is the Route 55 Murfreesboro. And the concept is that customers, they can book a trip anywhere within the zone, and as long as it starts or ends at one of those 2 connecting points, then WeGo, as the transit agency, will essentially pay for a part of the trip. So the customer pays $2, and then we'll cover up to a total of $8 towards the trip. So if it's a $9 trip, essentially the customer would pay $2, and then we would just pay $7. And that discount is automatically applied through the Uber app when the customer books, as long as they have signed up for the subsidy, which they can do through clicking on a voucher link that we provide on our website or typing in the URL. There's a couple ways to do that. We also have QR codes available at the bus stops that customers can scan to basically sign up for the program. And then we let people know about where the program's available on our website through an interactive map. And the goals of the program are really to provide an additional option for customers that are in areas where there may be some demand for fixed route service, for traditional bus service, but it's not really a conducive environment to do so, either because of the street network or just lower density. And it would potentially be very expensive and inefficient to run a full-size bus through those neighborhoods. So this provides an option to customers to be able to access the rest of the transit network without necessarily having to invest those resources. And it also provides, in many cases, a better quality of service, because rather than having a bus that maybe runs every 30 minutes or once an hour to connect, customers can choose to ride when they want to ride. And then the service is also accessible for customers that maybe need a wheelchair accessible vehicle or don't have a credit card or smartphone. And that's through one of our existing contractors that help us provide paratransit service to customers with disabilities. So they can contact that provider, Mobility Solutions, just using a phone. And as long as their origin and destination are eligible for the program, then the discount will automatically be applied to their trip cost with Mobility Solutions as well.
Have you both personally used the service, and what were your thoughts while using it, and maybe any feedback you received from participants so far?
I have not used it. I don't really live that close. I suppose I could make the attempt to try to plan a trip there. I have not, but I know Dan can talk more about some of the feedback that we've received, but I know we used a group that helped us test. Before we started the service, we had a beta testing period, and we had some groups that helped us to test that and gave us some feedback about it. But the one thing I would say about, not necessarily about the feedback about the service itself, is just the point that we receive a lot of requests constantly about providing bus service in many of these areas that Dan mentioned. And the reality is the characteristics of those areas is not conducive to many times operating a fixed route bus for limited time, and it's costly, as Dan talked about. So it's this is one of the positive sides about providing an alternative that help us cater to that. It's more cost effective, and it's just it's an easier way. And I should say a lot of those requests come from council members that feel that they don't really have any bus service in their districts, and it's difficult to do so because of what we talked about. But I know Dan can talk a little bit more about some of the experiences and the comments that we've heard from some of the testers.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't gone through the process of actually writing a trip, but I've gone all the way up to the point of booking the trip essentially within the Uber platform to get an idea of the customer experience without actually triggering a ride. But we did recruit beta testers, both internal employees as well as a group of customers, to try out the program in advance of its full rollout in October of this year. And we got a lot of good feedback from them about what could help make the program a little bit easier to navigate and customer friendly. And we're able to incorporate some of the suggestions and recommendations that we received from that group into the program itself and into the public materials that we made available to help educate customers and the broader public about the program. And so far, at least, we haven't received any complaints about the service or anything like that. It's been off to a slow but steady start, which we expected with COVID. We've had just over 70 rides since the beta testing began, and then the full program launched in October. But that's slowly increasing in terms of the number of rides we're seeing on a daily basis and the number of customers using the program. And we also wanted to make sure that we had all the kinks worked out before doing a hard marketing push. And so that's something that we're looking at as kind of a next phase, is to get the board out a little bit more aggressively to start getting greater adoption.
So you have already touched upon a little bit what the areas and populations were targeted when the service was drawn up, but we're wondering specifically how this service is attempting to alleviate social and economic inequality within Nashville, or if that was a goal like entering into the drawing phase.
One of the things that we wanted to make sure when we launched this program was that it was just as accessible as our regular fixed route service for low-income customers, for customers with disabilities, for anyone who wanted to use the service. And a key way that we did that, in addition to our partnership with Uber, was having that partnership with Mobility Solutions to provide that option for customers if they just wanted to pay cash on board the vehicle, or just call a number to book a trip, as opposed to doing something electronically. And again, they also have the wheelchair accessible vehicles. So from an equity and accessibility perspective, that was a key goal that we had, was to make sure that the service was accessible. One of the other things that we're looking at is potentially reaching out more directly to our existing paratransit customers who might be using our demand response service for customers with disabilities that can't normally utilize fixed route services, because we have some of those customers that the reason that they don't ride fixed route isn't so much that they can't ride a bus because of their disability. They just can't get to the bus stop because of the lack of pedestrian infrastructure or mobility issues. So if we can help bridge the gap there, then it provides those customers with greater freedom, because instead of waiting, generally we have you have to book those trips on our paratransit service a day in advance. They could ride the same day, and they can ride whenever they want to, and connect to the fixed route service to go wherever they need to go within the city.
Dan mentioned a very important piece about being able to provide accessible vehicles for this service. That is one of the areas that has created a little bit more oversight in these kind of programs from the Federal Transit Administration, to be able to make sure that when these partnerships with providers like Uber or Lyft, which typically don't have that service, they want to ensure that the service is accessible to everybody. And so I think that was a very important factor in being able to make this the way that we want it to be as accessible. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that one of the trends that we've been looking or seeing in recent years, and I guess once we have more information about the census numbers, it's just going to validate these. But there's been as the city continues to grow and housing becomes more unaffordable for many of these low-income populations, people are moving more toward the suburbs or those lower densities areas, the fringes of the city, where our network probably doesn't provide as good service and it's challenging, as we talked about. And I think this is an opportunity to be able to have an option for people to still get access to frequent transit, even if you are in an area that is not accessible because of the conditions that it's not walkable, or it's unsafe, or you don't have the ability to do that. So I think that's another way that we help provide, expand the accessibility to our network to many those other populations, even if they are not in transit accessible areas currently.
And how are you tracking the ability for this program to provide services to those in need?
So we are part of the beta testing involved evaluating the customer experience, both on the Uber side, but also with mobility solutions. And again, we were able to take, the feedback from those testers and make sure that that the user experience was solid for both. One of the things that that we are looking at is how to more directly engage our customers with disabilities, because we haven't seen a lot of usage from them in the program yet. We get detailed trip information from our providers that we don't necessarily know who's traveling, or exactly where they're going, but we get enough information to be able to see trends, and because we have the two different providers, we can infer a little bit about who's using the service from that. But we're one of the other things that we'll do later on during the pilot is try to engage with customers using the service by, for example, locating people at the transfer points. Because again, we don't necessarily know exactly who's riding, but we can meet people there and ask them if they've used the service, and then get information about whether the cost is an impediment to the ability to access the service. We can also interview people that maybe haven't used the service before, but they're boarding at those locations, and try to figure out why not. And maybe it's just they don't need to because they're very close to the bus stop and they can just walk, which is fine. But for folks that might be coming from a little bit further away, or catching a ride with somebody, it'll be a valuable source of information for future planning.
And as you stated previously, WeGoLink is currently available along Route 55 Murfreesboro Pike, and all these trips have to take place within a specific service zone. So why did you prioritize this area when first designing the program, and are you planning on expanding the service zone as well as the times if it increases in popularity in the future?
You want to start with that one, Felix?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute.
No problem.
We talked about the characteristics of the different zones that, or the zone that we talked about. I like to point back to our strategic plan back in 2016 in motion. It identified ways or strategies to improve the access to transit, and in looking at new areas or gaps in the system, it talked about potential mobility on demand zones as an alternative, as an option to be able to do that. And this is it's a fairly new or recent model. So in 2016 it had not been really done a lot. And that's why what we're doing is a pilot. You can look around the nation. There's going to be just a handful of agencies that may have some experience dealing with this. But basically, we were looking for places where you could have a good connection because the characteristics are not there. The pedestrian infrastructure is not available. It's just want to make sure that you can provide connection ideally to frequent service in the system, and also looking at those areas that probably have a higher propensity of people that can use transit, meaning they may be lower income, or they have fewer cars in their household, or maybe minority populations, and some of those conditions like that. So Antioch is an interesting area. The road network is not very have a great system. It's kind of meandering. It's difficult. If we were to operate a fixed route, it probably was not going to perform very well. But even going back, this is one area where we tried to implement a similar system in the past many years ago called BusLink. It was kind of a similar concept, not quite the same, but because of those characteristics, and we know that there's been a lot of growth in this part of the county, and it makes sense to be able to look at these as an initial zone. And I think if you look also at the Nashville Next plan, which is the comprehensive, the general plan for the county that the Metro Planning developed, this area of town is one outlined for it's a tier 1 area of growth that is going to be seeing a lot of growth in the next 10 years. It's going to, so they're anticipating better transit improvements. We have a fairly good connection or a connection to a fairly good operating route. Actually, 55 is our best. It just overtook our Route 56 in recent months as the busiest route. We have plans for a potential transit center in around the Global Mall. We already have a stop there and some connections to other services. So there's a lot of different things that made this kind of a good area. And I think as we look forward, we're going to be looking at other areas that meet similar characteristics to be able to start expansion of this service as an alternative. And I think this is going to be, we're going to be taking an item to our board next week, to talk about the potential for expansion of the WeGoLink program into other areas of the county. So, I mean, it's a great opportunity. I think, we're cautiously looking at advancing these and see how it works. But if all the stars align, it could be a good opportunity for people and for us to be able to add coverage to our network without necessarily incurring in a lot more expenses to doing that.
And if popularity does rise, would service times also be extended, like holidays and Sundays included?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we'll actually be discussing with our board and other stakeholders. We started out with fairly limited service hours, and especially on weekends, without, as you mentioned, no Sunday or holiday service at the moment, because we weren't really sure what the demand was going to be like, and we didn't want to set ourselves up with having to pull back from what we had put out initially. But with what we're seeing so far, we don't have concerns with expanding in terms of being able to accommodate those increased trips within the program budget. So we will be looking at expanding the hours and days of service to essentially match what the connecting bus line hours of service are. So we'd be running a little bit earlier in the morning and quite a bit later in the evening. Right now, the program ends at 8 p.m. on weekdays, and the Route 55 Murfreesboro, as of our October service changes, actually now runs past midnight. So we'd be looking at extending the program hours for WeGoLink to essentially line up with those, so that any trip that you were trying to take on the bus route, the connecting route, you would be able to make a connection using the WeGoLink program.
Great. Last question. Is there a possibility that WeGoLink could partner with electric vehicle rideshare organizations such as Earthrides in the future, or are there any plans to prioritize electric vehicles maybe being more integrated into the structure?
The initial purpose of the pilot was really to assess the viability and the customer experience around this type of a service, first and last mile connections, without a specific or explicit focus on alternative fuel vehicles. However, it's certainly something that we'd be open to in the future, especially after we get through this initial 6-month period and we have some lessons learned. So far, at least, Uber and Mobility Solutions have been good partners to start with because they had a framework in place to be able to essentially accommodate the business logic of the program in terms of defining the stops and making sure that the customer discounts were automated and that kind of thing. And if there's other service providers that can meet those, similar requirements in the future, I think we'd definitely be open to, potential partnerships. We're also, looking at ways that potentially in the future, and this wouldn't be near term, but because it would require additional investments in new technology on our end, but looking at ways that we could potentially even provide some of these trips using our existing fleet of paratransit vehicles, and certainly alternative fuels and electric or hybrid vehicles for that fleet is something that that's always on the table as we look ahead. So those are a couple of ways. Short answer, it wasn't an initial focus, but definitely it could be something that we look at for the future. The big benefits that we see for the program right now in terms of, for example, reducing emissions generally, even though many of the vehicles might be operating using gasoline, is that we're essentially encouraging ride sharing by providing a service to customers, whereas before they may have not been able to take transit. So they maybe got a ride with a friend or drove themselves, going wherever they were going, or even maybe took a Uber or Lyft trip all the way from their origin to their destination. Now they're using that sort of, single or low occupancy vehicle mode just for a couple of miles, and then they're using fixed routes to make the rest of the trip. So there's definitely significant benefits there by, increasing the utilization of the existing resources that we have available.
That's great. Thank you so much. That was our last question. So thank you so much for speaking with us today. And if you have anything else to add, or would you like to add anything else on top of what we talked about? Okay.
No, I think thank you for the opportunity. Dan, thanks for looping me in. I appreciate it, and happy to help. And any questions or follow up or other things we can help with, we'll be happy to. But we just think this is a good opportunity for us to be able to expand the ability of people to access transit in general, not only in a specific zone, but how that connects you to the rest of the system, and how that's going to work with additional investments that we continue to make in our service for longer hours of operations, better frequencies, priority for transit. So in the end, it just opens up more opportunities for riders to access services, employment, educational opportunities, healthcare, you name it. So I think overall it's just another important piece of the puzzle to help improve the system in a greater scale.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity, and it helps to promote awareness of the program on our side as well. So it's definitely, definitely beneficial, and I think it's something that it's an early step for us as an agency. It's something that has been done to some degree, in other agencies across the U.S. and overseas, but we're learning a lot from this, and it's definitely. Just kind of the first phase for us of, a more, of basically introducing an entirely new service option or, tool that we have in terms of designing transportation services in Nashville in the future that'll help us to be, we think anyways, to be more effective at what we do and also have a greater reach into the community.
The second transit service we will be discussing is Ready by MATA, the Memphis Area Transit Authority. Ready by MATA is a convenient curb-to-curb transit option that provides people with a ride-hailing service that will pick up and drop off anyone within the Ready service area, which can be found on the MATA website with no advanced reservation required. Ready is available in 3 service areas. Links provided on the MATA website allows one to view maps of each service zone and see their location accessibility. Zone 1 is in Southwest Memphis, which includes Boxtown, Westwood, and Whitehaven. Zone 2 is in North Haven and Fraser. Zone 3 is Cordoval. Since this service is still in the early processes of its introduction to the public, until the spring of 2022, rides are available for free. Similar to WeGoLink, one is able to book a ride through the Go 901 mobile app or through a simple phone call to the service. Transit vans are accessible to people living with disabilities, as well as extremely comfortable, transporting up to 8 passengers. Overall, these services offer a flexibility for people's local travel. Offering these short-distance, on-demand travel services can provide inexpensive or free transportation to a trip to the grocery store, medical appointments, and even public transportation stations. We will now talk to MATA representative Mia Harvey to learn more about Ready's services. So, hi, we're going to start with a quick introduction. So if you could just go over what it is you do for MATA, and we'll just get right into the questions.
Well, hello, my name is Mia Harvey, and I am the communications person or PIO for MATA, which is the Memphis Area Transit Authority. And we are the second largest transit agency in Tennessee, and we service Memphis and Shelby County.
Awesome. So let's just get right into the questions. Could you provide an overview of Ready by MATA's services?
Sure. So Ready by MATA is a convenient curb-to-curb transit option. It's similar to like a private ride hailing service like Uber or Lyft. So we'll pick you up and drop you off at any of the locations that's in a designated zone.
Nice. And have you personally used the service, and what were your thoughts while using it, or what feedback have you received so far from participants, since I know it's very in the early stages of its use?
Yeah, so we began the service of August of 2021. We've seen tremendous success. We've got a lot of great feedback from our participants and they have used the service. And actually, yes, I have used the service. It's definitely very convenient. I enjoyed it. I was actually taking a reporter to kind of test the service out, but we were able to use the app or make a phone call and use the service just like as if I was a customer. And it was very convenient, very relaxing. The part of town that that we drove through to make the connection. So I've used the service myself. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. So how is this service attempting to alleviate social and economic inequality within its respective communities?
So one of the things that we're using, or a couple of things of how this service is alleviating social and economic inequality. One, we're improving accessibility. And so in the areas, I guess the zone 1 area that we use kind of as far as with the pilot program is that it has low density and low walkability and infrequent to use transit as a vehicle transportation option. So definitely improving accessibility. Also, we're improving service efficiency as well. And so in those areas, again, where you may have a longer trip or connection time, this is able to provide viable options so that someone can be able to reach employment or other destinations that may be like a medical appointment, or you have an appointment with a service provider. In order to instead of making your schedule around the bus, the transit, the fixed route service, you're able to kind of plan your day using this mobility option as a very viable option. And also, too, we're using this to provide gaps in coverage, gaps in service coverage. And so we're able to, where there's not like a fixed route available or within a reasonable walking distance, this is definitely also a great option to use as well.
Yeah. So how are you tracking the ability for this program to provide services to those in need? How were specific populations targeted?
So we used we have a Memphis Transit we have a Memphis 3.0 plan, and within that plan is a transit vision. And so the transit vision outlined for how can we improve transit options and provide more accessibility to transit in certain areas of our community. And so this Westwood, Boxtown, kind of Southwest Memphis area was one of the communities that were identified in that vision.
Nice. Okay. And are you planning on expanding the service zone in the future to like maybe not larger, but more areas of Memphis and maybe Tennessee?
So we started off in the Southwest Memphis area, which the kind of areas that I just mentioned, which were Westwood, Whitehaven, and Boxtown, and we saw tremendous success in those areas. And so we have expanded to the North Haven, Fraser area, and also Cordova area. So yes, we do plan to continue to expand transit options.
Awesome. So how did this initiative come about? And once again, the populations that the service was targeting, was it specific when the initiative started coming about, or was that the first thing in mind, or how did it all start?
So the city of Memphis has a 3.0 comprehensive plan that identified transit services like one of the top priority issues in Memphis. And so when a study was done to ask our residents, what are some of your top priority issues? Again, transit was something that was identified. And so how can we improve transit and how can we invest more into transit? And so it ranked actually number 5 right behind assessing job opportunities. And so we know transit is connected to a lot of solving a lot of community issues, and one of these is also accessing job opportunities. And so we were able to again just identify like in certain areas, was it like land use decisions, we've seen like jobs moving, housing, education, recreation areas, and contribute to kind of like what's a mismatch and how can we again improve mobility options so that we can see these communities flourish. And so looking at again different communities and what were their mobility issues, or did mobility kind of contribute to how can we improve these communities, those how they were identified.
In mitigate carbon dioxide emissions, actions should be enacted to incentivize renewable and efficient energy use, such as electric transportation and alternative fuel adoption. So is Ready by MATA thinking of switching their vehicles to electric, or any alternative energy vehicle infrastructure? Will it be integrated within the program, do you think, maybe within the next 10 years or as it flourishes?
Yeah, so we do know, we've seen a lot of studies that say that communities with strong public transportation can reduce the nation's carbon emissions by 37 million metric tons yearly. And so we understand that definitely public transportation plays a key solution into, mitigating carbon dioxide emissions. And so as a part of that plan, as we move forward, we definitely will look at, electric or alternative energy vehicle infrastructure for our microtransit services like Ready, as well as our fixed route transit services as well.
In phase 2, will the public still be able to call, or will they be required to book and pay for rides through the Go 901 app? And what other plans are there for phase 2?
Yes, we are continuing. Again, they're able to call and use the app currently. We're integrating additional technology. Far as we'll have a smart card, we're integrating that currently. So that'll be additional options that they will be able to use to use the ride. But far as just contacting, yes, phone and the app are the best way to use it right now.
Mm-hmm. And just to recap one more time, the cars that are used are open to all people, and they are disability friendly as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Like I said, we have definitely been excited to provide this option to our community. We've seen tremendous success. It definitely has very much taken off, and to be able to provide more accessibility to jobs, to grocery shopping, to we've had to nail appointments, to medical appointments. It's definitely been great, and so we're very excited to be able to provide this option and hopefully be able to continue to expand it.
Yeah, great option, and thank you so much for talking with me today about just all the intricacies that have went into it. Anything else that you would like to add, or?
I think we've captured it all. Like I said again, we've definitely seen tremendous success within the areas that we've expanded it, and we hope to continue to expand those options and be able to know that transit is such a viable and vital part of communities, whether you use public transportation or not. The benefits to not only the riders but also to the community as a whole are exponential.
Within their specified locations, WeGoLink and Meta are attempting to act as first mile, last mile connectors, offering paratransit accessibility and flexibility. If you are interested in learning more about these services, feel free to explore their websites, which will be attached below.